You know, it occurs to me, I probably should invest in a full moon pint glass and a full moon shot glass. If any of you guys are able to find links for that stuff online, go ahead and throw them in the comments below. If I don't forget, I'll check up on it myself, but there's a good chance that I will. In any case, we are coming at you fucking live from purgatory. Well, we're not really live, but we are kind of in a bit of a state of limbo here. The full moon room is not complete. You know, a few more touches to be put in on that. I gotta wait for the posters to arrive. So we're just kind of shooting this, you know, with a plain black backdrop, which I probably should have been doing the whole time just to make it, you know, spooky or something like that. But today, as promised, we have for you our 6th and final review in our current wave of reviews. We're also going to be coming at you after this with our coming attractions, so stay tuned for that segment as well. In any case, salutations, fellow vidiots. Welcome to yet another episode of that full moon madness, baby. So when you're doing this kind of stuff, every now and again you run into one of those films that you're super fucking nervous isn't going to live up to your nostalgia and your hype for it that you remember from when you were a kid. And more than once in this series, I've been rewarded by that paying off, and tonight's review is no exception. The film that we're going to be covering is 1993's Invisible, The Chronicles of Benjamin Knight. This is the follow-up to the somewhat mediocre Mandroid, which we did cover earlier in this wave, but let me tell you this. In no way should that movie be used as a measuring stick for Invisible. This movie blows it out of the fucking water on every level, and hopefully we can impress that upon you with our review. So without wasting any more time, Invisible, The Chronicles of Benjamin Knight. Invisible, The Chronicles of Benjamin Knight was written by Earl Kinton and Jackson Barr. It was once again directed by Jack Ersgaard, following up his work on Mandroid. It stars Brian Cousins reprising his role as Wade. We have Jennifer Nash stepping in to fill the role of Xana. We got Michael Della Femina once again playing Benjamin Knight. Kurt Lowens reprising his role as Dr. Iban Drago. We got David Kaufman in there playing their lab assistant, and we got Aaron Epole playing the new chief of police, Petrov, and Valentin Popescu playing Leonard, Iban Drago's brand new psychotic homeless sidekick who heads a whole army of psychotic homeless people that he has recruited to do his bidding. It's had music by David Arkenstone, cinematography by Cristiano Pogani. It was produced by Charles Band and the same European people that produced with him on Mandroid. It was distributed by Paramount and Full Moon Entertainment, and it was released at some point in 1993. It was actually shot back-to-back with Mandroid, which was a regular thing they would do back then, so, you know, all of the same vibes are there, just done a lot better, because they were in the groove by the time they hit the, you know, shooting schedule for Invisible. And all the same people, with the exception of the lady that played Xana, were able to come back and reprise their roles. Anyway, basic gist of it is Iban Drago somehow survived their, you know, final battle at the end of Mandroid. He has taken up residence in this abandoned, like, sanitarium, and he's recruited this army of presumably just homeless people, but it seems more like they're actually ex-patients of this sanitarium that had just been turned out into the wild, and he kind of gathered them all up into this group and became their leader. He is working with the Supercon to try and heal his wounds that he received after it blew up in his face during the last movie, and he's experimenting on these homeless people in exchange for allowing them to abduct nubile young women that he forces to table dance for them. And of course, you know, he gets a squeeze on the titties every now and again before he turns them over to his clan of maniacs for them to use as they see fit. It's actually pretty fucking sweet. He ends Mandroid revealing that he's alive, and he's like squeezing on this prostitute's titty, and then he literally does the same thing to one of these abducted girls the first moment that you see him in Invisible. He's a fan of the big breastises, something we have in common. Anyway, while all that's going on, it turns out that Wade and Xana have continued to work alongside their new lab assistant, I believe his name's Ryder, with the Mandroid and perfecting the Supercon and all this junk. On the side, Wade kind of uses the Mandroid to do your run-of-the-mill superhero stuff, you know, saving random Russian people from being trapped under their tractors and the like. He's still playing like he's paralyzed, even though he only got shot in the thigh and in the shoulder in Mandroid, so I don't really get that. I'm pretty sure that gold bricker can walk. Pretty sure the police chief thinks he might be able to as well, because he tips him out of his wheelchair later in the movie. That stuff aside, Benjamin is being released from the hospital. He is completely invisible, and they're going to work with the Supercon to see if they can't create a formula that will turn him back to being visible again. At first, it kind of has some ill effects, you know, makes him kind of wig out a little bit, and they got to use the Mandroid to restrain him and all that. But eventually, once he develops a tolerance to the Supercon, it's able to take effect and make him visible again. And he's able to turn invisible at will as long as he can, like, hold on to a Supercon crystal for a minute and trigger his invisible powers. Then he's just got to take this drug to turn visible again. The downside is he's going to have to use the Supercon drug for the rest of his life, or at least as long as he wants to be visible. Now, while all this is taking place, it turns out Dr. Iban Drago has actually kidnapped Ryder's father, their lab assistant. And in exchange for his father's life, he's got to steal, like, the Supercon from them so that he can have the perfected version of it to use in his efforts to heal his disfigurement. And so Ryder sets about doing that. On the side of that, the new police chief, Petrov, is, like, still super suspicious of Wade and Zana and these people out at this lab, because all of those motherfuckers that got murdered, you know, fighting the Mandroid, like all the police personnel and whatnot that he blew away with the AK-47 while, you know, Drago was controlling him, they've never got to the bottom of this. You know, the only survivor technically was Wade and Zana, and they never gave up any information on it. So this dude is pretty sure there's something crazy going on with these guys. When Ryder steals the Supercon, stupidly for some reason just handling it with his bare hands, even though he's been working with them the entire time, and, you know, of course is exposed to it in very much the same way that Benjamin was, which leads to him having a car accident, and he is found dead and in the process of turning invisible even though he is dead. This police chief has cause to arrest Zana and hold her for questioning until she decides to cooperate and tell him what the fuck's going on. On the side of this, a lot of layers to this. There's a lot of, like, stuff going on the side of other stuff in Invisible, but pretty much all of it's awesome. Anyways, on the side of this doctor that had discovered that Benjamin was invisible has told Petrov about this. So, you know, in addition to wanting to bust them for whatever hijinks and sketchiness went on in Mandroid, he also wants to find out the secret to this invisibleness because he thinks the Russian government could use it to create a whole army of invisible people. Long story short, Benjamin and Wade have to break Zana out of the jailhouse, and this leads to an awesome fucking, like, gunfight car chase through the city. Eventually, you know, Zana and Benjamin are able to flee to this hunting lodge while the police take in Wade for questioning. Zana's kidnapped by Drago, who's now pissed off that Ryder wasn't able to get him the refined Supercon. So he's just gonna, you know, take out his frustrations on Zana. So Benjamin has to go break Wade out of jail. And then together, you know, Wade in his wheelchair rocking an AK-47 while simultaneously controlling the Mandroid with these dope sunglasses he's modified to basically do the same thing Drago's, like, helmet did. You know, he can control it with just thought alone, but it's a lot less bulky. It's just this old school pair of retro shades. They head off to rescue Zana from Drago's lair, which is this gnarly sanitarium. I'm not going to ruin the whole finale of the movie for you, but Invisible is absolutely fucking awesome. It seems like it's almost overly complicated, but the way it's written and it all plays out, it actually ties up all of the loose ends for the most part that they have going on in the movie, while leaving it open for potential sequels in the future. They really have, like, the tragic, angry superhero thing dialed in with Wade and Benjamin. Somebody that was writing for this was definitely reading some Doom Patrol, I'm pretty sure, at the time. Jennifer Nash does a bang-up job filling in the role of Zana. It is a bit jarring at first, but once you see her performance play out, you quickly warm up to her, and it's like she may as well have been Zana the whole time. Drago, while kind of limited in his role in the movie in that, you know, Petrov is kind of like the main villain pursuing them, is actually even more bone-chilling in this than he was in Mandroid, and him hanging out with, like, this whole tribe of maniacs just adds a creepy, grimy feel to the movie that was present in a very small dose in Mandroid, but in Invisible, it's like a prevalent thing in the movie. All of the action and the car chases and the explosions, of course, are fucking awesome. The effects are all handled really well. Everybody's performances have improved this time around, so it doesn't have anywhere near that wooden quality that Mandroid had with a lot of their performances. In this, everybody was throwing down. And let me tell you, once, you know, you got Wade controlling the Mandroid with his glasses and his wheelchair and his AK, and you got, you know, Benjamin going invisible and them working together like a badass superhero duo, it does give me that vibe that you get from like the Marvel movies, you know, Avengers and things like that, where you see like rad superheroes that you like teaming up together. And it just totally got me fired up on the idea of what potentially could have followed this had they spun this into their other shared universe stuff. Maybe got Dollman involved, Dr. Mordred, put these guys all together to fight some cosmic foe or some gigantic Russian army of invisible warriors. I'm sure I'll end up repeating this shit again in the outro segment, but it needs to be said several times that Invisible is already a full moon fucking epic. If they had done that crossover superhero team like that, it would have been absolutely amazing. And I think it would have made most of our childhoods to have grown up with that as part of the full moon library. Definitely some missed opportunities where that's concerned. If there's some type of alternate universe where that did take place, I'd like to visit it sometime. So what else can I say about Invisible? It's just fucking awesome. It's everything that you kind of wanted Mandroid to be, or rather everything Mandroid was, but like dialed up to 11 and really perfected. You could tell maybe in Mandroid everybody might not have been totally behind the roles that they were playing, but in this one they fully embraced the shit. They were behind the spirit of the film, and it shows through in the final product. The only gripe I have really about Invisible, and I'm sure I mentioned it in the review segment, but Ivan Drago is kind of underutilized in the film. He does have some rad bits, but you know, he kind of takes the sideline in lieu of the newer villains that are introduced in the story. And that's fine. If they'd utilized the potential that they set up in this movie and laid the groundwork for in terms of like crossovers, this could have been something awesome. Ivan Drago could have came back and teamed up with one of the other Full Moon villains. You know, they could have had Mandroid and Benjamin Knight sort of team up with Dollman and Dr. Mordred, and we could have got like the MCU before the MCU with Full Moon. They already kind of did that in certain respects, but man, especially with the way that they end this movie with them talking about visiting New York and Los Angeles and then eventually settling down in Washington, D.C., it was like tailor-made for that to happen. And I firmly believe, had the deal with Paramount not fallen through on account of Lurking Fear, that's exactly what we would have seen eventually. That stuff aside, Invisible definitely is still one of my favorite Full Moon movies. It wasn't all just nostalgia hype. It wasn't me looking at it through rose-colored glasses, you know, back to my childhood or whatever. Little 10-year-old Mo was renting this motherfucker for a reason, and that's because it kicks ass. So get your ass on over there to Tubi or Full Moon Streaming or Amazon Prime or wherever and watch this motherfucker immediately. As always, I have been Mosley. You've been a bunch of sexy fucking beasts, and this has been yet another episode of that Full Moon madness, baby. Cheers. Thanks for watching. This concludes our current wave of reviews. We will see you back here next time with the coming attractions.